Season 3, Episode 3, Walk With Me.
Yes. So this one begins with a helicopter flying through the air, and then it starts encountering trouble, and it's damaged, and it starts smoking, and then eventually a crash lands.
And we at first thought that this was like the same helicopter that Rick saw and that led the walkers to the farm, but that is not the case because Andrea and Michonne are together, and they see the helicopter fall from the sky.
I mean, it could be the same helicopter because this was like from a settlement that had
that's
some
fair.
like army or National Guard in it.
It's just not the same
but
trip.
I mean, it might be, yeah.
Right,
So I mean, but
okay.
it might be a different one. But
That makes sense. Like it could technically be like the same one, but it's not. It's not the same trip that let the walkers out. Okay.
yeah. So then they go to investigate, and they see the smoke and they go to investigate, and then they come to the crash, and Michonne goes over and checks out the dead, and she finds two of them definitely dead, and isn't sure about the other one, but then the governor and his men drive up, and so then Michonne falls back into the forest with Andrea and her walkers.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, the governor gets out, and his guys come over to the crash site, and they start looking at stuff, and they stab, I guess Andrea and Michonne can't see that, the guy who was bisected by the helicopter rotor,
Is turning.
yeah,
is
that he
reanimating.
turned, yeah, and so then the governor stabs him, and they
So they just
stab
see the
the rest of them,
stabbing.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they get visibly freaked out, and then later they're like, "Oh my God, you stabbed dead people! What's up with that?" And it's I mean, okay, so conveniently neither of them knows about the
No matter how you
omnipresent infection thing, yeah. But, they just seem, it's I don't know, I mean, maybe they were Michonne, just got, a brief look at, all of these dead.
Right.
So, maybe they were bitten. They just seem to, make assumptions about
really
this
up
stuff.
in arms
Yeah.
over,
it's the most insane thing in the world, and it's I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
it's,
maybe they were just
pretty
being
minor,
careful. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, yeah.
So Merle comes back in this episode, and that's pretty cool. And he's talking to Andrea about the group and stuff like that, and she just consistently goes back to Daryl, and I guess that's his brother, so that makes sense. But she continually steers the conversation where she's like, "Well, Daryl became a leader at the farm." And, well, Daryl did this, and Daryl did that. And she even says, well, Daryl went back to try to find you, but you were already gone. And then she, mentions Rick and said, Rick tried, but, never says, what he tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, Rick tried to save him also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. That would have been probably a good thing to mention. Be oh, well, Rick did, go back with Daryl to try to find you, and but you'd escaped already, and
Right.
Yeah. So they're so they're in Woodbury, and the governor's talking to him and showing him around and stuff, and so as I've said before, I don't think there's any excuse for Rick not finding somewhere to set up base for his group
For
before
those
the
8
prison.
months?
Yeah. Because okay, the Woodbury people
They did it.
yeah, I mean they have some streets blocked off, and they have these these somewhat, they have these kind of tall walls, but it's not anything insane. It's just something they put together, and they have some guns, but it doesn't appear that they have a ton of weapons, and the governor's saying to Andrea we have a couple of veterans, but mostly we're self-trained in military matters. And it's just oh, okay. But wow, if I think maybe, is it possible that they just foolishly assumed that walker herds were able to just like overpower any defenses, like,
well, they even said like back at the farm, like, oh, this size.
Well, yeah, that's what. Yeah, Daryl's
right,
Daryl's dumbass like
could,
proclamation.
Like, push it off the foundation.
He's like, I'll tear the whole damn house down, and it's like, well, without any evidence, and then it's just like they just seem really like.
They're like, that's
defeatist,
gospel.
I guess.
Go off of what Daryl said,
and it's like, but Woodbury's been here this entire time, and they seem fine. Like, according to like Rick's group's logic, like, oh, there would have been no point in trying to like defend the town or anything. They should have just run away at the first like sign of a walker.
But yeah,
because like, true. Oh, we're already defeated, and and I was like, well. I mean, apparently not. Apparently they were able to do fine. You know?
And, like, Woodbury is not that far from the prison.
No.
So,
and that's why, like...
If they had have just ventured out a little more, they probably would have found Woodbury.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, okay. So there's towns around here. Mm-hmm. So, like, why didn't Rick's group ever just find, like, a 3-story building or something?
Yeah.
And just, like, set up a base... like at an elevated position upstairs. And just, and then like go out and look for supplies and stuff. And like, even if they didn't stay there permanently, there's just no excuse for not like putting Lori somewhere, while she's gestating. Like
making her go from house to house is pretty irresponsible.
Yeah. It just seems very like, they just seem to have been like in this weird mindset where it's like, well, we have to just keep on the run because there's walkers. And it's like, but, okay, I guess not. I guess the governor pretty much proved that that's not the case. And, like, the people of Woodbury were, like, not such pansies. And so I guess they were, like, living a much better lifestyle because they were like, oh, no, let's just, like, set up a town here.
Yeah.
And then they did. And then they were safe. And Rick's group is like, canned goods. We gotta find canned goods and eat owls and such. Because, I'm Rick and I'm your tyrant, etc. Ugh. Rick is such an idiot sometimes, all the time. But
So, back at Woodbury, they did take one person from the helicopter crash that was still alive. And they're like, tell Dr. Stevens that we're coming. And... we were kind of surprised because Dr. Stevens is a female in the show, but in the Governor book series
and the comics,
Dr. Stevens is a male who is like kind of his right hand man. So
kind of more like Milton on the show.
Yeah, I think they kind of took.
They kind of
they took Dr. Stevens and made it into two from the comics, and like made it into two separate characters.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and Dr. Stevens from the comic book, like. He does everything that the governor says, but he's also like, you got to drink this to forget where you are. Like,
He's more like, he like goes along with everything, but he's also like not happy about it, and he's just like, whatever. This is like, I mean, I think he was part of that like conspiracy to kill him.
Yeah.
But then that didn't work, and then they just like probably gave up and were like, well. Okay, then. Yeah. I guess that's it.
The show also never does any sort of, like, backstory on the governor
or I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, because the books about it are, like, super interesting.
Yeah.
And we haven't even been able to finish them all, like, because we can't find the audiobooks for free. But, like, his story of how he got to Woodbury is really interesting, and... They never explain. Andrea even asks in this episode, like, can I ask your name, like, your real name, not just the governor, like, if that's not too much? And he doesn't answer. But here, he...
Oh, I think he said Philip.
Did he answer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Or no, maybe not. Maybe that's later. I missed that exact moment.
I think he says it later.
No,
but like,
I think yeah.
Everyone just calls him the governor, but here he goes by Philip. Philip is actually not who he is. In his backstory, so in the show, Penny is his daughter, and that's also not correct according to like the original comics, and the governor stories. Penny was his niece, and it was his brother Philip's daughter. He is actually Brian.
Correct.
And later on, we see him go off, and he's kind of like on his own, and he meets some people living in a high building, and he happened to see the name Brian on his way there, and so that's like when he's there, the people are like, oh, what's your name? And he says Brian, and the show implies that it's because he saw that name, so he just chose it, but like, that's actually his real name.
Yeah.
There was like so much to his story that we never find out, and that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it would have been cool if they had, like, they should have done a, like, flashback episode or something that showed, like, some parts that gave him more of a backstory, because, yeah, there's really no backstory given to Philip on the show as to, like, who he was before the apocalypse. So, it would have been very cool if they had sort of incorporated more of the governor, like the comic book governor's story into the TV show version. Like, it doesn't have to be that elaborate or anything. It just could have been like, oh yeah, he was Brian Blake, and he, you know, he like he went insane and snapped because like he essentially, I mean,
got his
that's wasn't 100% his fault that he got Penny killed, you know,
and then eventually Philip gets killed. So, and like later on when we see those episodes that I was talking about where like he does go off and he meets that other family. I think it's 2 episodes, maybe 3, but like
no, it's a 2-parter of like just him on his own.
Those are your favorite, like
those
I really
are done like those
really well. Like the story is good, the cinematography, the lighting, the sound, everything is really good about those 2 episodes, and they totally just should have taken that same format and done a backstory on him. Like I think those would have been great episodes. I think
so. Because like I think this actor who plays him on the TV series does a good job.
Yeah.
I think he does a good job at portraying this character. I think they kind of miss the opportunity to flesh out the character.
Yeah.
Because it's like kind of bare bones.
Well, and like there's stuff from when he's at Woodbury that they took out from the comics that like they had to because it's a show, like it's on TV, like some pretty gruesome things that he does to people. But like you didn't have to take out his entire backstory.
Well, right, and that's why like I mean, I think making him like not as like over the top villainous like is a good idea, you know, like cuz then you can kind of like make him more sympathetic, but but like you gotta like keep some aspects of the original character.
Yeah, and I think like showing his struggle with like with Philip and Penny and understanding why he is the way he is now would actually make him a little more sympathetic.
Well, yeah, because we don't see like in the TV series he's inconsistently insane. Yes. I mean, in that he's like insane rarely, maybe like 5% of the time, he seems like he just like snaps and goes crazy. Like when he shoots everybody at the end of season 3. You know, like so he is sometimes crazy, but most of the time he's not. I mean, he like, you know,
or he like hides it really well.
Yeah, you know, but like he's mostly pretty sensible and like seems in control of himself.
Yeah.
And like I think it's interesting on the show, like Woodbury is portrayed as being like very well run and like the people are happy. And then like in the comics it was like much more like brutal and like chaotic and like it was more like everybody was kind of like on edge and kind of crazy and desperate and like you know what I mean? And so it's like on the show it's like he actually seems to be a good ruler. Like he's actually keeping things like up and running like really well and like keeping the people like hopeful and placated and like you know like he's like inspired Merle to be like so much more civilized and he's like, you know what I mean, it's like it actually seems like he's doing a really good job, which I think is like interesting compared to the comic and book version where it's like this like dystopian like like he's keeping it running, but it's
Right.
like based
It's
entirely on like
it's not
brutality
happy.
and
Like,
yeah,
it's not a
you
place
know,
people really want to be other than out of necessity.
right, exactly.
And we can totally see that like people love being here when like that representative is showing Andrea and Michonne around.
Oh yeah,
And like everyone's smiling and waving at them, and there's that girl in the background that keeps like darting in and out of the camera. And then but then like we see at the end of the episode, we think it's kind of hard to tell, but like as the governor's like coming back into his house,
or he's like getting up from bed, I think.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
like getting
okay.
a drink, and then he's gonna go look at his fish tanks.
right.
Yeah,
There's like a girl in his bed, and we think that that's the representative, but
Yeah.
she's like super gaga over him during
Oh,
when
yeah,
she's like
she's like,
giving the tour. She's like, "Oh, the governor sets strict curfews,
Yeah.
and he keeps us safe. And the governor, the governor, the governor, the governor. Oh my god!"
yeah. Andrea's like, oh yeah, I get where you're coming from.
She's like, "I'm gonna be you."
Yeah,
next."
pretty much. Yeah, huh. Yeah.
Andrea flip flops a lot about Woodbury.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because when this representative is, or I think before that, when the governor's like showing him around at night, and
Yeah.
then when this like
Okay.
representative's showing him around, it's like she's like Andrea's being like really combative about like everything and just being like, well, no, that's impossible. Like you can't have walls, you can't like live like this. This is
Right.
insane.
She's like,
you know,
"You haven't had any casualties in the walls since early winter. Like that's not possible."
yeah,
You
she just
can't do
seems
that."
like very like she's just like I feel like
She's very skeptical.
yeah, but then and then it's like, but then of course later on she gets like does a 180 and is like in love with the governor in Woodbury and is like just like being kind of dumb like in the opposite direction, like defending it too much, and it's just like, oh my god, like I don't know, it's kind of annoying, and like Michonne during this whole thing is like barely saying anything when they're
Yeah.
there, and she's just like like making faces all the time.
Merle even
and
like
just,
calls her a mute. Like,
yeah, that's true. And it's like, okay, I think it's, I don't know, I think the show kind of screwed up with like her antagonism with the governor, because like in the comics, I mean, it makes more sense because he like rapes and tortures her for like, I don't know, maybe a week or more. And
So
and
it's, like,
so like it makes sense
understandable.
to have this like where they're like arch enemies kind of thing, like, but like in the TV series it's just like basically she's like, oh, I know he's up to no good,
Right. We
and
don't
then
have any
it's like,
real
oh,
reason
you're
why.
seducing Andrea, and that's it. That is it. And she has like this insane like hatred towards him.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, okay, I mean, that kind of makes Michonne seem like, I mean,
little insane.
like neither of them are like good, but it makes her seem more like the bad guy in that
does.
relationship. And then it's like, well, of course he wants to kill her.
Right.
Of course he's like, has this vendetta against her. Like
she's trying to
she
take Andrea
senselessly,
away,
well,
like-
she senseless, I'm getting ahead of myself, but she senselessly killed Penny just to torment him.
Right.
Because she has such a raging, monstrous hate boner for him.
Right.
Because, oh, you stole Andrea. Like, wow, it would kind of make more sense if she was, like, romantically in love with Andrea or something, maybe.
Yes.
Because, like, honestly, it doesn't make a lot of sense that she's, like... I mean, I know Andrea is, like, the first human being that she's, like, been with, you know? Like, since she killed, her husband and brother-in-law or brother or whatever the relationship was between like, you know, yeah.
I think it was her fiance. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they got married.
Oh, so they had a kid before they.
I think so.
Nasty. But yeah. Anyway, it's but it's just like, yeah, I think they really screwed up. Like, I mean, because like the governor tried to kill her, like he sent Merle to kill her, but it's just like they really needed to like give Michonne a better reason to be like this hateful towards
Yes.
him, I think, like, because as it stands, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't like have him do something worse to her. Like, it doesn't have to be like, you know, like the comics, but like something would have made sense. Like, some reason why she has this, like, vendetta from the beginning. I feel like that would have made more sense.
And it's like, it's nothing of consequence, but I want to know why Andrea wasn't wearing shoes when the governor like took her out like, into the town at night.
No, yeah, I would like to know that too. Like, she could have just asked for shoes,
right?
Like sandals or something. Like, I don't. Yeah, no, I would like to know that also. So let's see.
So at the end, when he gets up from his bed and gets a drink, he goes over to like his secret. It's kind of like a closet, I guess.
Yeah.
And sits down in his chair, and he's looking at fish tanks that are filled with walker heads. And from the show's perspective, it's just like, oh, he like they're trophies. Like, he's crazy. This is just like for sports. Yeah. Like even the guy that was alive that they saved.
Yeah.
His head is at the top, so it's like, yeah, these are just trophies for him.
That poor fellow who was hideously disfigured from the crash, I assume, because he was so ugly.
But it's portrayed differently in the book and the comic, and it gives a little more depth to the character.
Yeah, because it's like, this is like not long after Brian goes fully, like, he just completely shatters his psyche after Philip dies, and then it's like he becomes Philip and like morphs into his like eventual state as the governor, and he's like looking in the like these fish tanks, and he puts walker heads in them, and it's like, because I think, if I'm remembering, it's been a little while since we read the book, but it's like it's like he's kind of like thinking about like watching TVs like in the past, and like how like once I mean, this was in the old days, but like once the broadcast would end, and then like you'd get like TV static, you know, and then just like zoning out. And so then he's like, it's like the fish tanks, because I think in the book it's like saying like the walker heads are like snapping and snarling and like gurgling, and like on the show they're not, they're just like they're just barely moving, you know, but they're like essentially motionless and just staring back. But like in the book it's like, you know, like they're making noises, and they're like chomping, and they're like, you know, they're active in there, which makes more sense. And so then it's like in his insane state, it's like the fish tanks are TVs with static, and he's like zoning out, and like his madness is kind of like temporarily subsiding from that, and he's sort of able to like have a little bit of peace, like just kind of, you know, just like letting his mind go watching that. And it's like, that's like the closest thing to like TVs, sanity. You know. And so, but it's like, and I think that like, I mean, they could have communicated, like, they didn't need to show the backstory or anything. They could have communicated something like that. Like, what if in this scene when he's watching them, it's like, I don't know, what if, like, and I mean, they might have needed to do it differently, because, like, him getting up from bed with that girl, like, doesn't make, you know, like, but, like, what if it's, like, he goes in there, and then he, like, sits down, and like we hear his like heartbeat beating hard or something, and like, you know, like we hear like sounds of like the killing when he was like killing the army guys, you know, like what if it was like he's like, so then it's like, okay, we sense that he's like insane and anxious, and then he like sits down, and then it's like the heartbeat slows, and then like we hear like static. Like, we hear, like, static until that's all we can hear.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends.
That would have been a really good way to end it.
Thank you. Like, wouldn't that, like, have communicated essentially something very similar?
I think so.
Like, but I just feel like it's, like, and the, like, because when I first watched the show, like, before, like reading those books or, like, reading the comics or anything, it's just kind of random. It's like, okay, so like, but like, why fish tanks?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so he has these like trophies and stuff, but like, why fish tanks? Why? It just seems kind of random. It's like, oh, okay, I guess. But there just doesn't really seem to be any, like, and, like, why take trophies from walkers? Because, like, that's the logic they use, but, like, just random walkers?
Yeah.
Like, okay, the guy from the hospital, the horribly ugly one, like, with the face, he looks like a jack-o'-lantern or something, like, okay, that was a human being who you killed, so, like, I guess, I guess if you're, like, taking trophies from, like, humans, I guess, but, like, why take walker heads as trophies? Like, what, was this one particularly, like, skilled in combat or something?
Right.
What's the...
Was it a stealth walker?
Yeah, was it, like, did you, like... have Milton perform, like, IQ tests on it before you killed it, and it's like, this one is, like, a special walker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I take great pride in getting this one's head. Like, it's just, yeah. So, like, I think, like, better communicating why he does that would have been helpful to the story.